Good morning. Welcome to the session this morning from Awesome Tech Training. I'm just going to give this a few seconds to allow all of our attendees to join from the waiting room and get into the live session. Okay, so I can see that our attendees are joining thick and fast. That's great. Okay. The session we're running this morning, Awesome Tech Training, why choose WordPress? So a few housekeeping points just before we get going. You'll notice as you join that your microphones are all muted. So whilst you can hear us and see us, hopefully, we can't hear or see you. We are recording the session today so that we can get a link to you after we're finished so that you can watch the recording back, but also get a copy of the slides. So all the materials and links and so on that we're using in the session today will be available to you via email later on. Please do ask questions as we go through. You'll notice at the bottom of your kind of Zoom control panel, there's both a chat and a Q&A function. Please, as questions occur to you or observations or anything that you'd like to bring up, please drop them into the Q&A or the chat. We'll cover what we can in the background as we're going through, but we do allow some time at the end that I can ask some of your questions live of our presenters. So introductions. My name is Rachel. I'm on the business development team here at Awesome Tech Training. I've got two colleagues on the line. I've got Lorna Walker, who's also mostly in the background, fielding questions and so on today. But our main presenter is Steve Hanlon. So Steve, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, sure. Cheers, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Today, we're going to go through an introduction about WordPress. What is it? Why choose it? And so what we'll go through is effectively, first of all, just introduce ourselves and tell you about what we do. And then we're going to start at basics. We're going to start at really, what is a website? How is it put together? And why do we need things like content management systems? And so where then does WordPress fit in? What is it? What alternatives are there? And then why people choose, why it may be the tool that is good for you and your website or the project that you're putting together. And we'll finish with some next steps. So some things that you can do once we've finished ourselves. So about us, we're Awesome Tech Training, and we help small businesses with their digital marketing and their technology. So basically leveraging the internet in order to improve their marketing and sales, and using tools like WordPress and others that are out there in order to do that. And one of the main things that we do is we have an online course, which is how to build a WordPress website, how to put it together in one day. We've got a self-paced course that you can do. It's a set of videos and it takes you through from installing all the way through to being able to launch your site. And so you can do that. And we also do one-to-one training as well. And we do a bunch of other things as well. We do advice and support and consultancy. So we're able to help you across the board with things that are both technical and aimed at your digital marketing as well. So you just need to speak to us or drop a question into the Q&A if you've got anything like that that you'd like to ask. And we've got a bunch of other webinars as well that cover that whole spectrum of that aspect of your business or your projects that you're working on. And so you can get a discount because you're here today. And I'll mention that at the end of the presentation this morning. And so we'll just crack on and we'll start with this sort of really basic idea of what is a website? What is it that makes up a site? And it's really a case of HTML and images. So you can see over here, we've got our HTML. And then here we've got our dancing hamsters. So back in the day, you had to understand how to put together the HTML in order to generate the website that you wanted to be able to do. And so you would have developers and designers who put these things together. And as the internet grew and as it became more popular and democratized, people had tools in order to be able to put these together. And these are the content management systems. And we still need developers and we still need designers. But the CMS takes us an awfully long way towards being able to put together our site. And in many, many cases, we don't really need that technical help in order to be able to put a site together, because there are tools like WordPress. And so the CMS, something like WordPress, manages both the text that puts together the site, and it manages the images and the media and the other aspects of your site as well. Sort of the links and the structure of your site, the way that people navigate around. And the CMS will also look after any other bits of functionality that you have as well. So be it e-commerce or just contact forms, or the ways of building up your mailing lists. All these different things can be looked after by your CMS. So you don't need to sort of have a technical understanding of these things. You just sort of have an interface with them with this back end. So what we're looking at here is just a quick screenshot of WordPress dashboard. And we'll bob into that a bit more as we're going through the webinar. But this is our first view, and you can see there's all the different things that you can manage here on the left-hand side, and a kind of overview of the site. Now, there's lots of tools out there for being able to build websites and to manage them online. And WordPress fits very much within that set and that spectrum of tools. So you can see this is just a handful of different tools that are out there, but you'll see that some you may recognize. So things like Wix and Shopify and maybe Squarespace you might recognize from adverts. A lot of these are commercial. Others like Drupal and early ones like Movable Type are sort of free and open source. And then there's others as well that are based on things like the operating system that you may be using. So you might be limited to, say, using Windows, and so you might use something like Umbraco. Or you might want to go for something that's very sort of e-commerce based. And so you might go for something like Shopify. And so they're all out there and they all do something ever so slightly different. And WordPress fits into this as more of a general, generic sort of CMS. It's not necessarily tied to the operating system, and it's not necessarily tied to what it is that you want to do. So it's not sort of like solely for e-commerce, for example. Now, given that there's all of these different CMSs out there, it's interesting to see that WordPress has about a 50% market share. This is a year ago nearly now, when I pulled these numbers out, 50% market share of CMS sites. What that means is if you navigate to a site and it's been managed by a content management system, then there's a 50% chance that that's actually running on WordPress. It gives you an idea of the volume of people out there who are using it, the number of people. This is 27 million plus different sites, so that figure will be bigger. A market share of all websites at the start of this year. So nearly 40% of sites just across the board were using WordPress, regardless of whether or not there was a CMS in there. And so that represents quite a large number of sites that are using WordPress. And so there must be some good reasons for people to choose WordPress out there. And so why do people choose WordPress, or why not choose one of the others? Well, some of them cost money. So some of them you either have to buy a license or you've got to pay, say, a monthly subscription. Some of them can be more niche. So the pool of people that you can have out there who can help you is limited because there are fewer people who are actually using it. And so when you're sort of like popping a query into Google, or you're looking for somebody who's able to help you, you'll find that it's trickier to get hold of the answers or the people to be able to do it. There are questions as well, or there are issues sometimes around flexibility as well. So some of the sites, especially the hosted sites, will be written specifically to achieve sort of a particular aim. And sometimes you find that that is restricted. And so you may start off with a site that does exactly what you want. So you may be on Squarespace and you've got everything that's looking lovely. And then all of a sudden you may want to do something and you're restricted because it's not implemented or it's not available within Squarespace, or that the hoops that you've got to jump through in order to be able to do it are such that, I mean, it becomes too difficult to be able to do, and you start looking for something else. So we find sometimes that we get people who have started out on Squarespace and Wix and others, and they need to move over to WordPress, or they need to move over to something different because they're kind of stuck and they can't do what they need in the business. Now, a really important thing also is that your site represents your business, or it represents the project that you're working on. And very often when your site is hosted on a third party, like Wix or Squarespace or others, you don't own many aspects of that site. So you may own the words, but you don't actually own pretty much anything else on the site, and you're kind of stuck. You're trapped within that sort of environment, and you may find that you are then trapped by things like the terms and conditions, or whether or not they continue to trade. So there are people say, there was a thing a couple of years ago with MySpace, where they just deleted a whole load of data and images and other things that people had. And that was some stuff that people had curated and built over years. And that was just lost. And that was because they were sort of tied into that system. What if you're promoting, say, your products, and then all of a sudden you find out that because those products are not available or may not be allowed to be sold online in, say, somewhere else in the world, that then you can't do that on this platform as well. And then all of a sudden your business isn't able to sort of continue on that platform. There are things that are difficult. There are things really that can change when you're relying on other people. And it's tricky also to move. So it can be tricky. You know, you can get your words and you can get some bits and pieces, but you don't have that structure. And because it's so important for businesses, we do recommend that you choose something like WordPress to give you that control over your site. And it's not just small businesses, it's not just teeny tiny one-man bands that use WordPress. There are big names out there that use it. And so you're in good company when you're relying on this technology. So that's why you may not necessarily use one of the other platforms. The advantages of something like WordPress, you know, it's free, and it's free, and it's been going for a long time. So it's nearly 20 years old now. It's just had its 18th birthday. And at the heart of it is sort of an open source ethic. Now, an open source ethic just means that the code is available. You can download it if you wanted to and just spin it up. You can change it. You can turn it into something that suits what it is that you need, if that's what you need to do. It's free, as in the recipes for bread are free. You could bake it at home if you wanted to, but you can go to a shop and buy some bread as well. It's a thing that's out there, and it's basically been put out there for the use as a tool for people. If you're worried about things like open source, remember that most of the internet does run on open source. So all the big companies like Google and Facebook and all the others, at their heart is open source. And so again, you're in good company when you're choosing to use some code like this. So I talked about you could just download it and you can spin it up. But it's actually easier than that. If you've got a hosting package, so usually you'll go to an internet company, a hosting company, get some web space, and then very often you'll see a one-click install for tools like WordPress and others. But for WordPress, you literally just give me WordPress and it'll set it up and you'll start with a fresh copy of WordPress. And that is a very easy thing if you've got the hosting. In fact, in the training that we do, we'll take you through how to install it as well, and the steps that you need to do. And especially if you're doing it yourself and you're installing it from scratch as well, we've got resources for that. But it's easy to get up and running with something like WordPress. And it's also easy to use. So it's easy to install. It's easy to actually sort of get to grips with. It was for blogging and sort of came out of a blogging sort of culture back in 2003. But now it's more of a sort of platform in order to be able to build a site, and blogging is just a part of that. It's different to the way that some tools work. So if you're used to sort of working on point and click, what you see is what you get, kind of editors for your websites, then it does work differently. But once you've been in it and you've started putting together a couple of pages and you become confident with the way that it fits together, then it's a very, very flexible tool. It's something that is very easy to understand. We could take a quick look at a site, actually. Let's have a look. This is a demo site that I installed this morning. This is like a completely vanilla version of WordPress. You can see it's just got this hello world page and the home page and a couple of links off as well, you see. So it's a standard sort of, we've got a header, a body and a footer down here. And along the top, we've got an admin. So we're already logged in and we can see behind the scenes, we'll have a dashboard, and this is where we control it. We change what the text is, the way that it looks, and the pages and our blog posts and things like our images and stuff that brings our site to life, we manage in here. It's fairly straightforward. Pretty much most of the things that you do are structured in this way, with the menu down the left and various tools being available to you and different plugins and things, and we'll look at those later. And the pages that you saw there were effectively sort of a privacy policy and a sample page and that hello world that was mentioned as well. So if we go back, you'll see how it pulls all of those things together and turns it into a site. And we'll kind of pretty this up a bit more as we go along. So it's customizable. So you see how that's sort of like a vanilla site, and you generally wouldn't sort of go live with something that looked like that. Instead, what you would do is you would use a theme. So you'd go out and have a look and either find a theme that suits what it is that you're putting together, or you'll take a generic theme and then tweak it so that it looks like what it is that you're trying to put together. And so there's lots of tools to turn that initial site into the thing that you want. There are plugins, and the plugins are the things that give you the functionality. So if you do want to run e-commerce, or if you do want to link it to your MailChimp mailing list, the plugins are the things that give that extra, the extra functionality that you need in order to be able to do that. And there are blocks as well. So the pages, as you put them together, if you're using the sort of generic WordPress, you build up those pages using blocks within the block editor, and the different parts of the page you sort of place on the page and then add the content in those blocks, so you can configure them. That might be paragraphs or images, or it might be forms or links off to other things as well. So you can see that sort of through these three things, you're able to customize and build out your site. And one of the nice things about WordPress, and something that you get all the way through, is that if you can't find precisely what it is that you're after, and I'd say that 90% of the time you can find something that you're after, but if you can't, then you can always write something. You can find a developer who can do it, or you can do it yourself. You can dive in and see how it fits together and put it together. But to be honest, you get so far with the things that are out there already that this tends to be quite rare that you need to do this. So we'll have a look at themes, because that site, as we saw it, the green, sort of green and black site is quite plain. And what you would do is you would choose a theme to kind of jazz it up a bit, make it look a bit better. And there is a theme gallery. So this is just a quick snapshot, but there's 31,000 or more themes that are out there that you can install. And so if we go back to our dashboard and we look at appearance, you'll see we've got themes here, and we can pop in and see that there are themes that are installed that come with the site, and there are themes that you can search for as well. And so if we want to add a new theme, we click on there and we can sort of see that there are different themes that are available to be installed. And effectively, this is a gallery. It's a library of themes that exists that you can just sort of pull down from WordPress.org. And so you might have a look through and sort of see something. You might say, well, that looks precisely like the kind of thing that I want to have on my site. You can preview it and see how it looks. And you might say, yep, that's the one. And so you can click install. There's bits of information here that tell you a little bit about the site, but you could install it. And then when we go back to our list of themes that we have on the site, you'll see that it now has it here. So we're still running with this green sort of vanilla theme, but we could change to this, or we could change to one of the others as well. So let's say I'll activate that. And if we go back to our site and have a look, it looks beautiful. And this may be precisely what we want to have for the site. But you can go back, have a look, find the different themes, try them out, and find something that suits what you're after. I'm going to go with this one, with 2020. This is the theme that they used last year and was bundled with the site, and it generally does the job. And so you'll see again, we've got all the same content, all the same pages, but it's just presented in a different way. And so with themes, there's all of those themes, and the ones that we've been looking at are free, but there are also ones that are paid for as well. And those paid for ones, you either go to a site and you download it, or pay and download it, or you could get a developer to write something for you as well. So if you've got a very clearly defined, say, corporate identity, or you can see something and you want to tweak it for something that looks more like what you want, then sometimes you can get a developer who can do that for you. There's also a sort of freemium model as well, which you may have heard the term. Freemium is when you download something that's free and install it, and then if you want extra things, then you pay a license for the pro version or the sort of advanced version of the theme. And that happens with themes, and it happens with plugins as well. I'll just touch on responsiveness. Responsive sites are ones that work on different size screens, be it a desktop or on a mobile or on a tablet. So where the screens are different, it's called a responsive site if it changes the way that it looks depending on the width of the screen. And most of those themes that you see and that you can install for WordPress and are responsive, and definitely the ones that you'll see at the top, the most popular themes, you'll always find those are generally responsive because that's what people are going out and trying to use and trying to see. So I mentioned plugins earlier, and in the same way, WordPress gives you a gallery or a library of plugins that you can use. And there's a massive range of plugins that you can have. If you can think of it as something that would run on a website, then the chances are there's a plugin for it. So I've just sort of said here, there's forms, maps, e-commerce, learning, SEO, search engine optimization, all of these kinds of things are in there, but there is more too. In fact, there's like 55,000 plugins out there that are available for WordPress. Chances are that there's more than that. And for most of them, in fact, pretty much 99.9% of them, installing them is literally just a case of clicking on install and then clicking on activate, which I'll quickly show you. So this is our site. And if we go back into the dashboard and we have a look at plugins that are available, we may want to have, say, a Google map or something, or a map on one of our pages. And so we can have a look. And there's lots of different ways of putting maps onto a page. This one is good. So if we pop this in, you see all I've done is I've clicked on install, and then I can click on activate. Now, how did I know that's good? Well, I've used it before, so that makes it easy. But there are clues here that you can use in order to be able to sort of see there's information to see whether or not it suits what you need. And obviously there's a description, so you can sort of read what it is that it does. It's rated, and so you can see here, this has got like over 2,000 reviews, and the average of those reviews is 5 stars. So that sounds good. It also shows you how many sites it's installed on, and you can see here it's 400,000 sites as well. So it's widely used, it's widely reviewed, and it's well reviewed. All of these things together show that it's probably a good plugin to use. We can click on more details and this pops up, and it'll give us a lot more information if we want to dig into it. Things like, what version of WordPress will it work on? Sometimes you find a plugin and it does exactly what you want, but it might have been updated like 3 years ago or so. It might be very old. And so you would want to sort of like look at those and be cautious about installing it, because it may be that whoever wrote it has moved on to other things and isn't looking after it anymore. Whereas something like this, you can see that it works and it's compatible right up to version 5.7.2, so it works right up to the latest versions, and we get a bit more of information about that plugin. So what it's done is it's downloaded, so installing it just sort of downloads it and pops it onto the site. What you need to do is activate it, and activating it is just turning it on, really making it available to you. And so we can create a map. We've got this map. This uses a thing called a shortcode. But let's bob into our Hello World post and edit it, and we'll just pop that map in. Now, some plugins will use things like blocks. So this is our block editor, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. And you'll see that I've got a block here, and it says in this block it will show later. So let me just preview this, have a look at what my page looks like. And I don't have a Maps API key, of course. And so because the Google Maps needs an API key, it's not going to show me. But still, you just drop these things in and you just make them work. And so I could go in and tweak some stuff. I'm not going to. Instead, we'll move on. But what we've done there is we've downloaded a plugin, we've installed it, and then we've used it as a block to pop in onto the site. If you found that you didn't have the functionality that you need in order to be able to do that, or if you sort of looked through all of the plugins and you couldn't find what you need, I'm trying to think of an example. You may have, say, an in-house system that has been developed for you, which may be something like stock, or it might be some CRM. Then you can write something that works as a plugin. You can write your own plugin to go in. And obviously, when you look at the number of people who are out there who can help you, you know, there are people out there who can write these plugins for you as well. So if there's something that isn't there that you need, then you can add it in. We looked at blocks. So, you know, when I was looking at the page there, I added a block for a map. So the blocks are used for building up the page structure. And there are lots of different things that the blocks can do. So if we go back, I want to look at this map. I'm going to look at this map. I'm going to edit it. And I think I can tell it to use open layers, which doesn't use. And so now we're going to go back and have a look at our block editor. Right, so we've got our hello world. And it's saved. Look at that. It saved my copy that I was working on and that I abandoned a couple of minutes ago. So it kind of looks after you a little bit, the editor. But what we've got is we've got our page, and this is sort of rendered sort of like the way that the theme would show it. And what we've got is we've got a list of blocks that we can add to our page. So if we look at our page, we've got a title, we've got a paragraph, and we've got a map here. And you see we've got like little controls, and these controls depend on what it is that we're sort of adding in, and we've got a plus here. So we can add something. If we wanted to put something else, say an image, then we can pop an image in. If we had a slideshow or something, or a slider, we could pop something in. We can pop in some columns. Say we wanted to have 2 columns, we can do this. And then within the columns, we can add in new things. We can add a paragraph, hello world. And then here, well, let's try and do something. No, let's not try and do something. Let's try and pop that in there. Might not work. There we go. So we're going to have our map and a paragraph. And what we're doing is we're building up a page using the different blocks that are available. And you can see that there are many different types of things that we can add in. And we can embed links off to social media and other types of things as well in there. And what you find as well, as you add plugins, like we added the Maps plugin, you can then extend the number of blocks and the number of kinds of things that you can pop onto a page as well. And so it's a very flexible way of building up pages and dragging those blocks around to sort of see what the page should look like. And then you can preview it like we did before. And I'm hoping that we get a map now. So we've got our paragraphs, we've got our map, and we've got our first blog post, which would appear on our home page. If I go back to my home page, this is our hello world with our map and our different bits. So we build up the page in that way. So there's lots of blocks, and people are developing new blocks all the time. And very often you find, again, if there's something sort of on the page that you want to have, then you can sort of search through the plugins and through the blocks and find the thing that you're able to do. You can also write new blocks as well. So just like the other bits, you can write it if it doesn't fit. And so that's in that way, through the themes and the blocks and the plugins, you're able to build out a site very easily, just basically pointing and clicking, and build out a site that does what it is that you want. And you don't really have to be terribly technical at building that awesome site that you're trying to put together. And all of that information that you have, the information that's in there, like the way that you look at blocks, the way that you look at plugins, how do you manipulate the pages? And we cover all of that in our training. So you'll find if you go through the self-paced training, we'll show you how to go from a vanilla page through to what it is that you want to be able to do. So how to really become an expert on those different parts of WordPress. So we'll have a look at some of the other bits as well. So other bits of functionality that you can have within WordPress. One of them is e-commerce. So very often people want to get a shop, get selling their stuff. And there's lots of plugins that give you e-commerce. But I would say, I would state the obvious, which is the WooCommerce. If you look out there, then WooCommerce is like the single biggest sort of e-commerce provider for WordPress sites, and it is very, very popular, and it's because it gives you an awful lot. But there are other ways of doing it as well. There are things like BigCommerce, and BigCommerce have sort of like their own e-commerce site, but you can integrate with that. There's things like easy digital downloads. So if you don't want to have like a full-on sort of like e-commerce store, but you want to have digital downloads and sell them, so you've got ebooks or music or things like that, then you can do that through using that plugin. You can also just embed PayPal links as well. So just go onto PayPal, get the links, or use a PayPal plugin and be able to sort of set up some e-commerce that way. But the one that we use, and the one that a lot of people use, is WooCommerce. It's by far the most popular, and it gives you across the board. It lets you manage the products, track the stock if that's something you need, and it gives you access to tools as well, like your delivery and your tax, and maybe other sort of geographical things that you might have. And it also takes you through the whole of the process. So from the order being made through to alerting everybody what the workflow needs to be, being able to sort of deliver that or manage this sort of like getting it and fulfilling it and then delivering it. And it can take you through the whole of that process. And the incredible bit of this is that it's free. So it takes you sort of through 95% of what most people need. In fact, 100% of what most people need for an e-commerce system is free. But there are aspects of it that you pay. It's the streaming model. So you can see here, this is a different demo, but this is just was a work in progress a bit ago, which is I was checking some WooCommerce stuff, but you can see I hadn't loaded the images at this point, but these were different products and you could bob in. And so they're presented in a sort of e-commerce style manner, and in a way that your users and your prospective customers would recognize. They can sort of see something, they can choose from options, add them to the baskets, and it can take you through You can view the basket and then make your order. So all of this is really sort of familiar to your customers. And so their journey is straightforward. And when you look at the back end as well, you'll see that under WooCommerce, you'll have orders that are made. I don't think I've got any orders in this one, but you can also manage your products. Well, here you are, you see, so I've tested it back last year, this completed, but you can see also links through to managing your customers and your products and your stock. So you get all of this within this free plugin. So it gives you an idea of the depth of stuff that you can pull in and functionality that you can pull in with various plugins. There are other things as well. So for example, we use LearnPress. So if you were to get the course, for example, we use LearnPress to take you through that process. You get an account. We've uploaded all of our content onto there, and then it keeps a track of where you are, what you've done. If you wanted to set up sort of quizzes, then it lets you do that. But it also takes you through the journey of being able to learn something. It helps us create the courses, and it helps you sort of go through and learn how it's done. So LearnPress is a very, very rich plugin that gives a lot of functionality. We use a plugin called Events Tickets as well. You may have got your booking through this. If we're able to create listings, we can say we're going to have a webinar on this day. So if you go to the site and you look at all the different webinars that we're doing, you'll see those listings are generated by this plugin, and we've entered those details. And we link it to WooCommerce so that then for, say, our paid webinars, we're able to take a payment and go through. So we've been able to do that through using plugins. And we've used a MailChimp plugin in order to be able to build our mailing list as well. So as people are interested in what it is that we're doing, we've used MailChimp in order to be able to do that. So if you've got products, if you've got people out there and you want to attract them and then keep in touch with them, then you can use plugins like the MailChimp plugin to be able to do that. And then a really important part of having your website, and something that the CRM that you have has to be able to do, is look after your search engine optimization. This is making sure that your site and what you do talks nicely to places like Google or Bing or other search engines, and presents you in the best way possible, and guides you as well through what it is that you do, and make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position to be found by prospective customers. Search engine optimization is key to the way that you get out there. And it's baked right into the heart of WordPress. There are a bunch of things that are in there by default that come with sort of a core WordPress installation. A lot of the links will be based around the titles. They'll use sort of plain text words. The phrases that you use for titles are turned into URLs, which then make it easy for Google to understand what's on the page. It's been adapted in the last couple of years to do things like lazy loading. These are technical things, which mean that images don't have to load if they're not on the screen. They only load when they appear on the screen, and so the page comes up quicker. And with things like that, Google loves it. And it also generates things like sitemaps. And again, Google and other search engines use sitemaps in order to be able to understand what's on your site. So it needs to know what's on your site. It needs to then go to it and then read and understand what's on it. And so WordPress gives it a lot of that information to start with. And as a consequence, it's consistently ranked very highly as a CMS that is good for SEO. And then you can finesse and take that SEO further using other plugins. So the one that we tend to use is Yoast. And it gives you a lot of control over being able to do that, we have a guide. Actually, if you go to the website, and we'll have a link for it, I'm sure, and there's a free SEO guide which you can sort of access, and we've also got a webinar as well, which sort of dinks into how you can improve your SEO on your site as well. And Yoast, as far as tools within WordPress, is key to being able to do that. So Yoast is a freemium plugin. So like we had with other things, you get like a lot for free, and then you pay for some of the bits that are extra. And you can do things like modify how it looks in Google. So being listed is one thing, but actually how it looks when it's listed in Google is really important. I think my phone is starting to answer. So being listed on that search engine is really important. But what people read about your site once they're actually there is the thing that is the compelling thing to make them want to click through. So you don't want it to be some sort of jibber jabber that sort of Google's picked out off your site. You can tweak that and make it exactly what it is you want. So you can type in, meet the team who love to bring you the tastiest pizzas available or something. So that's maybe about us. So you can tweak those kinds of things. And it will also help put together things like schema data. Now, these are all technical bits, but you don't really need to understand or know about them once you've got the plugin in. These are things that tell Google kind of what kind of a page it is. They give a lot of information and extra information. So all of these different bits that Yoast brings for each of the pages mean that Google and other search engines understand what it is that you're doing better. And from that understanding is how Google will then make the search engine results more relevant. If someone wants to find you, it's going to be easier for them to find you. And again, so you get all of this for free. You know, it's incredible, really. Okay. So just some of the bits. You can have multiple users. So just in the way that you might want to administer it yourself, but maybe have somebody else add content. If you've got a store, you might want to have somebody who adds products to the store, but you may not necessarily want them to be sort of administering the whole of the site. WordPress lets you define lots of different users, give them different roles. There are different specific roles within the site, and so they have specific levels that they have access to. We kind of cover those roles in the training, but even then, if you find that that's not specific enough, then you can add plugins where you can define additional types of user roles. And we'll touch on security as well. So as you'll be aware, you know, security is really important, and security is important for anything that's on the internet. So because your site is out there, you want it to be secure. You may be collecting information, and so you want to make sure that nobody can break into it or exploit your site in order to be able to do something else. And so regardless of what it is that you've plugged in, be it your fridge or your Hoover or your website, you want it to make sure that nobody can get onto it. And so WordPress has regular updates. So as things change, or say new security problems are found, then it's regularly updated in order to be able to sort of keep ahead of the curve and to stop people being able to get onto your site. You know, it doesn't mean that you can just sort of install it and not do anything, but it takes care of the basics, you know, so you just have to cast an eye often and just make sure that everything's okay. And And the latest version of WordPress, it allows you to update plugins. So plugins will just sort of automatically update as the new versions are released. Core WordPress, so WordPress itself, will automatically update as new versions are released. And it will also send you an email. So when those plugins get updated, it'll send you a note and it'll say, I've updated these. And it's always a good idea just to sort of bob on and take a look and make sure that everything's still working as it was, but you know that your site is up to date and secure when it's updating automatically in that way. So yeah, so there's lots of help and support. Now, help and support is embedded into the system. So when you're looking at themes and plugins and other things, you'll see that there's links through to the plugin pages, to support pages. And so you can sort of get information and support that way. In fact, you can talk directly to the developers very often through that route. And there are a lot of sites out there. And so consequently, there's like heaps of people who can help you. Lots of people out there who understand the system really well. There are lots of sort of online forums and channels and user groups, and there are other more generic sort of websites as well. So very often, if you just Google it, if you've got a question about a particular thing, then you'll very often get a suite of results, which will include things like Stack Overflow. They may even have like a subreddit or something where people have been talking about trying to fix something. It'll take you to the plugin page itself. You'll find that there's a rich set of data that's out there already. And what you really want is that sort of core knowledge. So once you understand how the system works, which I think is where sort of things like the training courses and stuff like that come in, they give you that basic level, and then you can sort of ask the questions and understand and really make the best use of what's out there. So there is a lot of help and a lot of support out there in the community. So why choose WordPress? Well, you've got WordPress, or you've got some sort of like hokey self-written HTML and images website that you could do, or maybe one of the other CRMs. But with WordPress, you get a lot for free. You do get an awful lot. All of the plugins and all of the things that we've looked at today are for free. So you can just go away now and install that and get going. You own your own content, so you do you're not locked in the way that you are in many other systems or within many other services. So you do have that sort of control, and it is really customizable. So you can make those changes, and as your company or your products or your projects develop, you can then sort of change it as you go on. And you're not on your own. You know, that you're not sort of left with a tool where you can't get any support. There is an amazing community out there of people who use it. There are lots of information, and there is lots of good training resources. And I do think that the training that we've put together really does take you through from the start, and you finish it with a good knowledge of how things work. And so just some next steps, some resources that you can just sort of pull down, which are free. We've got some stuff. These links, by the way, these will be sent through to you, as Rachel said earlier. Build a site in an hour video. This will take you through WordPress on a single page and just sort of how to put together a really professional looking site, but gets you up and running very quickly. And you can just follow it through and work through with the video. And it gets you very, very quickly with something that's usable. It's good. The SEO for Small Businesses guide will teach you a lot about the aspects of search engine optimization. And we've got a really rich video library that we're adding to all the time as well. And you'll find that on our site too. So feel free to have a look around those. And we've also got some digital marketing resources as well. These are webinars that are coming up over the next couple of months. Take a look through this and take a look on the website as well, because we've got a lot of information and a lot of stuff coming up over the next couple of months that might be useful. And these you can just sign up to. Because you're here, if you use this code webinar21, then it'll give you a discount as you're going through as well. And so I do encourage you to make the most of that, because there's a lot there that you'll be able to do. And we've got training as well. So if you want to be able to build that fully functioning WordPress site, I want to understand what's going on as well. So understand and be able to become sort of an expert user in using WordPress. Then we've got our self-paced video training that's out there. That's normally £100. You can get it for £50 if you get it quickly. And we do things in there. You get a practice website, so you can sort of like work along with it. You don't have to have your own site before you do it, and you can try things out, and you've got that for a year. So you can really sort of like dig into it if you want to. And lots of people seem to like it, and we generally get lots of really lovely reviews as well. So yes, and these are some people which you can peruse when we send through the slides of people who've said nice things. And that's about it. Do we have any questions, Rachel?
Yes, we do. So what would be the best way to go from a site created in Dreamweaver at OneHost to a WordPress site hosted at GoDaddy, required to take advantage of Outlook 365? How do you do that, and minimizing downtime, etc.?
Okay, well, the Office 365 part of it is, unless it's sort of deeply integrated with the website, which generally most people use Office 365 to get sort of SharePoint, email, and things like OneDrive, and licenses to Office tools. And so that side of it wouldn't necessarily, in normal circumstances, sort of be an issue. So that is just a case of copying your DNS, something called domain name service, DNS data over to GoDaddy. Your website that's in Dreamweaver's effectively like one of the tools that was used early days for putting together the HTML and the images in order to sort of create the site. If you've got something like that and you're keen to keep that structure, then you've got a couple of options, and it depends on how they're stored in Dreamweaver. If in Dreamweaver you've got the pages as, say, templates, and then you're sort of building out the pages from that, then I would take that template and use some of the, there are some vanilla templates that developers can use to create a template themselves. And I would sort of like say, take that as a starting point and sort of pull the two things together. If something's being done in Dreamweaver, I imagine they're either technically competent or they've used a developer to do it. And I think that's really the step that they need to take those resources that they've got in Dreamweaver and map them across to a custom theme. The alternative is to take something like a generic theme. So something like Asterisk, which is a theme that we use in the training, use that theme, and then through the blocks and through the ways that are there within sort of default WordPress, effectively rebuild those pages in a structure that reflects the existing site. But that's really going to be the way that you do it from something that's effectively stored in Dreamweaver.
And in terms of minimizing downtime and so on, you would keep the old site live on its domain, set up a development site of some sort over in GoDaddy.
Yeah, so especially in GoDaddy, I think they have a staging page as well. So I mentioned DNS. DNS is the key to that. So for all the time that the DNS is pointing over to your other site, that site is live. And you can be working somewhere else on a development or a staging site, and be working on that and build that out while the other site is still live. And then what you do is in GoDaddy, you change that staging site to be a live site. And then in your DNS, you say, now point to that one that I've built over in GoDaddy, and that's it. And then close the old site. But those are the steps that you go through and able to be able to do that.
Yep. I've got two other questions about moving old existing sites over.
Okay.
Is it possible to give WordPress an old HTML site and get it to convert it? And basically the same question for somebody with a Wix site wanting to move over to WordPress.
Okay. If it's an old HTML site, the advice is pretty much the same as that for the site that's in Dreamweaver, because all you're getting with Dreamweaver is effectively an HTML site, really, out the back end of it. It's probably going to be easier if it's a plain HTML site. If it's been sort of written from scratch, Dreamweaver adds in a lot of stuff. If it's just a straight plain HTML site, then depending on the complexity of the site, if it's fairly straightforward, I would rebuild it using some of the modern tools, rather than and cutting and pasting. Now, if you've got like 1,000 pages, that's going to have been very difficult to manage in the past. But you're going to have to use a tool that would automatically scrape or something that the size. There isn't a tool that goes straight from here is a site, now create it in WordPress. There are sites that say they can do that, and there are some services that say they can do that. But those tend to be manual, to be honest. But what you're paying for is somebody basically to do that for you. It may be that that's the best thing to do in these circumstances, and you can Google it, you know, so that's probably the best thing to do. For the Wix one, I think within Wix, and Lorna, you could probably remind me on this, there's an export, isn't there? Have we been through this with Wix?
We haven't specifically, but it's relatively straightforward. It will certainly take the copy and the images, still requires formatting and making lovely, but the content you can move across quite straightforwardly.
Yeah, I would bob around the settings and look for something that says export. Yeah,
I think there's a guide somewhere that I can find and send to that person that I've definitely found before. Right, would you like to talk a little bit about WordPress.com versus WordPress.org? I've got a question. On the WordPress website, pricing shows 4 different levels, like personal at £3 a month, premium £7, and a business one at £20 a month. Where does the free site come in? I think this is a .com.org.
It is, yes, and I don't think I made it clear at the beginning, thinking about it. The WordPress started out as the free version, which I talked about, and which I basically covered in this. That is WordPress.org. WordPress.com is a hosted version of WordPress, which is run by some of the people who founded WordPress.org. And it's effectively sort of like the commercial side of it. So if you want to use WordPress, you don't have to use WordPress.com. And in fact, you get a slightly limited version of WordPress when you go through WordPress.com. So there are some themes, some plugins, and different bits that you don't have access to, where you would have access to if you did it through your own hosting and installed in the way that we talked about here. The counter to that is that for what you're paying for the hosting, and you're paying for some additional bits and pieces that WordPress.com add as a bit of a premium thing as well. But you kind of lose flexibility in order to gain from basically sort of paying a monthly subscription for it. So I would always suggest really just hosting it yourself or going through a company like GoDaddy and putting it through that way.
So that pricing that that person has put in here is from the WordPress.com side. Go to the WordPress.org.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, Lorna, you've taken yourself off mute. Did you want to say something?
No, I was just vigorously agreeing.
Excellent, thank you. Somebody looking at blocks. Did I glimpse a block that could be used for showing images side by side? I think.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the blocks that you get, if I'm still sharing my screen. So in here, in the blocks, we had the columns, which we saw here, and these can have images inside the blocks, and hence you get sort of side-by-side images. And these are effectively sort of, it says columns of text, but they can be images inside. But there are galleries, so you can set up gallery blocks, which effectively give you sort of a collection of images together. And then you can also install other ways of presenting images as well. So in some themes as well, there are quite rich ways of presenting like a portfolio.
So if you have very specific ways that you want to display images, it's worth shopping around the themes as well as looking at all of the different block types.
Yeah, or the plugins. So I can't recall one off the top of my head, but yeah, just search. If you searched for plugins, WordPress gallery plugins or WordPress photo plugins or something like that, you find that there's lots out there.
Excellent. Okay, I don't think I have got any more that have come through. So I'll say thank you very much to everybody who attended. As I said, we will get an email out to you later this afternoon with a link to watch the recording back, but also an opportunity to download the slides. And we hope that you come on one of our other courses or webinars at some point in the future. Thank you very much to Lorna for busily answering the questions in the background. Thank you. And thanks, Steve, for a great presentation. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.